Good afternoon, folks, and welcome. Definitely a discussion. This is episode 421, and today we have Datu Worden, who's been on here before, and today he's going to be joined by somebody who's coming out to his camp, and we're going to be talking about that, and that is Jeff Johnsgaard. And so this is his 43rd annual camp, 43 years of doing the camp. That's pretty incredible. I can't imagine doing anything that long. But we're going to talk to him what has kept him going, inspiration for even starting it, what to expect if you do go, and all that good stuff in between. And of course, we're going to get Jeff's background and what he's going to bring to the table there, and so forth and so on. So if you're watching, smash that like button and tell us where you're watching from. And without further ado, here we go. Hey guys.
What's up? How are you, Dean?
Good, and thank you guys for coming on. So this is gonna be interesting. I mean, you got your camp coming up, and we're gonna talk to Jeff and see what he's got going on and what your interest with him is for having him come out this year. But before we get into all that good stuff, 43 years, Datu. That's an incredible streak. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty crazy. None of my wives have lasted that long.
I would say, okay, let's look at 43 years. So 43 years oh my God, I'm drawing a blank here. So 43, so we're at, that would be 80. So what, 1980?
1980, yeah.
19, I was 14 years old then, and you were running your camps. Wow, 43 years. That's impressive.
Yeah, some of the years were two times, had two camps a year, especially here at Raft Island. When Ted Lukai was coming in, we'd do it twice. We'd do like a May camp and then an August camp or a Labor Day camp. So pretty cool.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, the early camps up in Wenatchee, Mission Ridge, there was a Boy Scout Vista camp just below the ski lodge. And gosh, I had an old U-Haul truck van, and I'd load the boxing ring up in that. And then we'd take it up and set it up at the top of the crest of the hill. And, we'd use the ring for 3 days worth of stick fighting, full contact type of training within reason. We're way up in the hills, so the goal is not to hurt anybody.
Yeah,
we did some staff fighting, and since there was some point karate going on back then, you could enter 3 divisions: the point karate, the continuous sparring, and the stick fighting. And all in the ring, which was 1980. Nobody else, not too many people were doing that in the Northwest.
I don't think so. I mean, Dog Brothers didn't start kicking off into the late. Yeah, I think you were a trendsetter in that regard, for sure. I mean, 1980. Matter of fact, some of the comments are coming in. I wasn't even born then. Paulo. Paulo was born in 1980. Wow, I'm 14 years old.
Wow.
Oh my gosh. And we got Robert, we got Eric O'Brien saying hi. We got Paulo, of course. We got Brett, Kurt, all right, and Royce, all right. So, Jeff, have you been to these before, or is this your first year?
No, I've been to several camps. Yeah.
Okay, so what's your
more than several? Come on, be honest. I think he's been here 15, 16 years, like that.
Okay.
Yeah. No, the last time we bothered doing the math, it was all the way back to, I'll say later grade school when I met Datu Worden, and been training with him ever since. The camps, of course, didn't come for about 4 or 5 years, just due to all that stuff. But then once you went, I mean, there was no not going after that. They're just such a unique experience, just full stop, period.
So wait, you were training him long before the camps, or?
Yeah, actually. So I originally started with him and several other kind of prominent NSI people in Canada. And so all the way back to Jay Creasy hosting a seminar in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And that was the first seminar I ever attended. And so it was actually the Datu show, right? We would go from Calgary to Edmonton to Regina to Saskatoon, and then making our way into America when we could to whatever was closest. And then, of course, that was a yearly camp. So it was funny because I mean, everyone has a unique history and that, and in National Spirit, my upbringing was unique in that I wasn't one of the people regularly, like at the home dojo, training with Datu, and so I was part of a group that would catch him on seminars. So we'd see him 4, 5, 6 times max in a year, and that would be a weekend, unless it was the camp, of course, which was more than a weekend. So it was interesting to see the progression of those individuals. I think when we first started going to the camp, I can look back on this with fond memory now and say that, oh, look, the Canadians are showing up. And then a few years later, it was like, oh, it's those Canadians, like they're actually getting better as a group, and that too, because our tribe was multi-city wide and that type of thing. So yeah, it was unique.
That's wow. I mean, you've been with all this time, and I mean, geez, that's pretty incredible. Datu, okay, so going back to 1980, it just seems like just so long ago. What was your inspiration for like starting the camp? Like, what'd you come up with? Like, what was the idea, the driving force?
Yeah, no, I had a lot of students in the Wenatchee area and Moses Lake. And there was a camp, it was a facility, and we're like, hey, let's go up there into the mountains, and of course I didn't bring the boxing ring up initially. Starting out, I brought in Bob Anderson, Kajikembo legend, and Jim Keating. So we'd do the camp like that. And shortly, few years later, Joe Simonet joined us. Actually, Keating brought David Harris up. A lot of people are familiar with David, amazing practitioner. Steve Smith and Chris Charno, some of those guys off the eastern side of the mountain trained with David. But actually, it was Jim Keating that brought him in initially and had been training with him for quite some time. So, and then Maurice Smith came, and then Jesse Glover, quite a few interesting people. Of course, Greg Walker showed up, and he covered the 93 camp, got an interview with Jesse. There was just a lot of Simon Posner out of Canada, who is a longtime WKA fighter. I was just actively involved in WKA at that time as the state director. I was training a lot of referees, and a lot of those guys were also giving me some tips and pointers and that type of thing. But yeah, Maurice Smith was part of that circle. Burton Richardson was up at that camp, as a matter of fact.
He was telling me.
Yeah, and Kevin Schmidt. Kevin's a CELA guy from Jim Ingram's lineage. But he was with Natural Spirit for a long time. He also apprenticed under Cliff Linderman for a while. Yeah, it was just an opportunity to get together and be in the outdoors and train martial arts, which was really a trip, actually. So.
I mean, yeah, you're going back to like 1980. Matter of fact, don't quote me on this, but I'm trying to think like Rocky Mountain camps where, we had Dana Asano, of course, and all them. Like, were they? I don't think they even started that early, did they?
I don't think so. No, I don't think so.
Yeah. I don't think so either. I think you were the pioneer, Datu, doing
a little bit. Thing. I mean, I often say, gee, if I could have planned this stuff, that'd be cool. But I was just shooting off the breeze, and
that's probably why it worked.
Yeah, it seemed like it, but initially it was always, everybody brought their own hibachi and that type of thing, and you were responsible for your own food. And then a little bit later, we just decided to have a camp chef and handled it that way. So,
camp chef, wow.
Yeah.
So Jeff, did you see this like timeline of change, progression, a chef, like bring your own hibachi? Oh, we're gonna have a chef. I mean,
Well, I saw some of the progression, that's for sure. Back then, I was also a different type of person, so I was showing up and training hard all day and staying up into the wee hours was my forte. Now I'm to bed early and and the rest of it.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Oh, to be young again, huh?
There was a lot of moonlight howling.
I can only imagine. You guys got a ring in the woods. You got a bunch of people camping out. You're young. It's 1980. I can only imagine some of the extracurricular activities, and I'll leave that at that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably close enough.
But what a trendsetter. Matter of fact, I think you. I mean, I don't know anybody else, but I have to say, you got to be one of the first camps go what you're doing. Now, was your goal back then, Datu, to have multiple? Was it by accident, or do you make a concerted effort to have multiple disciplines there and people be exposed to different arts and everything?
Well, it's interesting. A short story. My camera keeps drifting off here a little bit, but interesting story. I was at a Jerry Gould tournament. Jerry Gould's a real predominant shore and rue instructor here in the Northwest. And so there's this great big dude at the end of the gym. And I was probably about 185 then, kind of my stripped down karate style fighting weight. And I walked by him. I was Anderson's 6'3.5", and he was lifting at that time. So he was meaty, big dude. Looked like a WWE wrestler, the big show type of thing. And, it was wintertime. Well, the heat from the gym was rising, and a great big bumblebee or something came drifting down and landed on his shoulder just as I was walking past. There wasn't anybody else at that end of the gym, just this big monster dude. And I looked at him, and he's looking at me. And I walked up to him and slapped him on the shoulder. And then I realized what I did. So I stepped back and I said, hey, man, there was a bee on your shoulder. You're like, it's winter, man. What do you mean there's a bee on my shoulder? I'm like, no, really. I mean, I'm just glad he didn't felt me. But he goes, hey, you're that stick guy, aren't you? I goes, yeah, that's me, man. He goes, would you come up to my school and teach? And I was like, yeah, sure. And, as soon as we got together, I realized that he had more time in the art than me. We're the same age, maybe a year older. He was, but he was a raw Kajikembo guy from back at Hawaii. He trained with Walter Godin, one of the founders of Kajikembo. And he just excelled in that. I mean, really a hardcore Kaju guy. And so I realized that, dude, you're bringing a lot to the table. I might be adding to your repertoire, but look what you got. You want to, I do this camp. You want to come and teach there? I think you got a lot to offer. And then shortly after that, Keating had brought me over. He'd been training with Ernesto Preces, Dan Inosanto. He was Treco Kempo. He trained with Peter Urban, trained with Parker, and he had brought me in, I guess probably to connect the systems, try to figure out what he was missing between Inosanto and Ernesto in his FMA search. And I was just like, man, you got a lot to offer. Why don't you come in and, teach at my camp? So it was just, like, I mean, I'm a hodgepodge martial artist, I guess. I guess the best description would be from Dr. Brett's combat sambo, street sambo, and that's the sambo wheel. Each person is the hub, and then the things that you add are the spokes to the wheel.
You're talking about that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So, no, I think it was more accidental than incidental. I mean, like I said, hey, I feel like the scarecrow sometimes if I only had a brain, but things just happen, even today. I don't plan that much. I've got a list of things I should do, but I take every minute and every hour based on the phone call or whatever needs to be done. So I'm an improvisational, reactionary person, and that opens up a lot of doors.
Yeah, probably why it works well. You didn't overthink it. You just say, I'm going to do this. It's kind of like I did with this channel. I didn't have any background in interviewing people. I'm just saying, you know what? There's a void. I'm going to fill it, and we'll see where it goes.
Yeah.
But it sounds like so 1980 to obviously present day. So Jeff, when was the first time you? So that's kind of neat, Jeff. You're going to these. I mean, you're training when you're little, and now all of a sudden, like you're showing up at these camps. When was the first time? I guess you were like a guest instructor.
Well, you put me on the spot with that one. I can't recall. The thing about training in NSI, or I should say, or training with our group and under Datu is he has always granted me and us and everyone the freedom to do what they like, when they like, how they like. And so in turn, we see what that person is really after and that type of thing. But so he's always offered me the expression to, as he's told me for over 25 years, he's just up there demonstrating because he's got one more thing than the other guy, and in the next moment that guy might have something more than that guy, and we trade off. And so the concepts of leadership and the concept of instructing and that, in fact, one of the maxims I spout to this day as I travel and do my training is from Bob Anderson. I'm a full-time student, part-time instructor, and just the shaping of, at that time, quite a young, impressionable Jeff into what I am now, and I'm hopefully growing into even better. It's been a big part of all of that. And so, then granted, I moved from the military into law enforcement and law enforcement training. So then, when it came to things such as Kelly's. In fact, we brought him to Canada. Our state, our province, adopted a Worden Defense Systems curriculum for the empty hand and control type tactics, still taught to this day, actually, and that was many years ago. And then, of course, when there was some, joint manipulations, locks, and things of that nature. So, I would be doing that a lot. And so at the camps, it was just a natural thing to, demonstrate what that progression would look like, maybe if you had other tools on your belt, or if you had other considerations than just why am I here, I could certainly leave the situation, or things like that. So I guess those would have been the first things that I was ever a part of, instructing, sharing at the camp.
That's awesome. Wow. And now you're coming back. When was with the exception of this coming September, when was the last time you were a guest instructor there?
Every year, I guess.
Every year. Okay. So Datu, you have multiple guest instructors come?
Oh yeah, over the years, Lukey, of course, was one of the prime instructors. Mike Janisch rolled in, Joe Simonet,
big names.
Jesse Glover. What was that, Jeff?
Those are some big names there.
Oh yeah, for sure. I'd have to go down the list. I just even at my school and even at my gym, we brought Sonny Umpad in several times, and again, like Jeff says, it's who's there that does this really good, and to me, that's part of the curriculum or the program. As I run NSI, Natural Spirit, we brought Dr. Yip in, and Dr. Yip's a really amazing guy. He's out of Hong Kong. His sister was the highest rank female under Gogen Yamaguchi. His dad was an 18 weapons Tam Toy instructor. His mom was a collaborative Wusu. Interesting, Yip Man was like I don't want to say poverty orientated individual, but he was an old uncle. And when you look at the Yip Man movie, that was more like Dr. Yip's, Waipo Yip is his name. That was more like his family estate. They were both, his parents were both educators, and the father would say, I don't care what you train in, just respect the ties. So Dr. Yip actually went into one of the only Taekwondo schools in China, in Hong Kong, and his Taekwondo was impeccable. But he would bring me into his school to spar, more or less, the cocky ones, and then he would teach me 18 weapon stuff. So we traded.
Okay.
But he came to the camp and always a knowledgeable guy. Sukmik Khan, he's the old acupuncturist. He had trained in Shanghai in 1929. That's where he learned his judo. He's Korean, but he was an interpreter for World War II and the Korean
Okay.
War. I love the story. You touch me here, no, I'm not touching you. Jeff, you touch him. But anyway, in Shanghai in 29, he got in a bar fight, lost his whole front row of teeth. And he goes, I get in bar fight. I go to jail. I lose my teeth. I go to jail. I get out of jail. I go back to bar. He loses his teeth. I go back to jail. Ha, ha, ha.
Oh.
And yeah, he was an amazing acupuncturist. I mean, I seen him use needles at least 12, 14 inches long and go from a couple of my students' ankles all the way up into their knee, guys that were paralyzed and stuff like that. But he'd say, I touch you here, you die. Be like, well, fuck, don't touch me there. I mean,
yeah, make sure
but Keating was at camp. Gosh,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to say I hit a brain fart, but it just seems like Dr. Brett Jacques, of course, American Sambo, Jason Little. We just lost Jason recently. That's an amazing story unto itself. When I was teaching First Special Forces, Jason was the head of combatives for the 275th Ranger Battalion. So it was difficult because he would be deployed and I was straight at SF for 6 years, 2000 to 2006 with no breaks. And then I was contracted short term all the way up to 2014. He actually left the Ranger Battalion and went to work for Blackwater. He wrote the manuals, sniper manuals for Blackwater. When you see American Sniper,
Yeah.
I mean, that movie made me cry because so many of the soldiers I worked with I identified them just like the star of the movie. And, so getting back to Jason, he'd come to the camp, and it was a classic example because we don't wear belts. Paulo will definitely chime in on this. So you never know who's who, standing where, because a lot of the bad guys or the bad tough dudes are the most quiet. And so I said, okay, if rank's an issue, guys, line up right to the one you think you could kick their ass. Let's line up, like a belt rank, but nobody's wearing belts. Line up to the right, see whose ass you could kick. And, people are moving real extreme left to Mr. Anderson and Jason and that type of thing. And because he was so quiet and unpredictable as far as what he knew, you could just sense the guy was not the guy to screw with. And so it's interesting that belt don't really mean shit when you're squaring up with people. And but at the same time, like Paulo said, everybody was so professional. Everybody keeps everybody in check. Nobody rolls in there with a cocky ass attitude.
Yeah, not the place to do that. We lost Jeff, but hopefully he's going to come back.
He'll roll back in, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, speaking of Jeff, Jeff, very humble about who and what it is he does, but he's a professional educator as a law enforcement officer and travels worldwide to teach his methodology. If you guys have watched the John Wick series, that method of shooting was developed by Paul Castle, British man. And when we met, it was at Bullseye Shooter Supply, owned by Brian Borgelt, one of the Ranger Battalion guys. And when Mohammed and Malvo, the Beltway snipers, that's where they stole the sniper rifle. I was teaching at Bullseye and at First Special Forces, and Paul had came in as a guest. And so I had met Paul first, and we didn't necessarily see eye to eye on a lot of stuff. He was intrigued by my martial arts. And when you look at the postures and the rotation from right to left, in essence, it's just like Chisao.
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
In my exposure, Jesse Glover's non-classical sticking. And so I suggested to Paul, or suggested to Jeff, you guys need to hook up, because I'm not a professional shooter, but Jeff's law enforcement, former military, and so that's how they became friends. But a lot of that car system integrated the empty hand formulation of how to bridge, how to close, what to do after you do that, how to decelerate the threat. And of course, that's Jeff's forte. I mean, I'm a knuckle dragger and a spontaneous mover. Jeff's an intellect in how and why and when you should move. So I see Jeff back up. So let Jeff expound on that if you want.
Yeah, yeah.
These are also elements that we integrate into the training at NSI and at the camp. A vast majority of my guys are shooters for personal defense or professional. And so we address those things not only through Jeff, but Mr. Anderson, also through Jason and a couple of the other guys. Colonel Chris is an amazing technician, and he was one of Dr. Yip's students when he was like 15 years old, and I was over there kicking people's butts. But now he trains strictly with NSI and with Jeff. But it's, I don't know, it's a snowball or it's a progression. It's just, I stand back and go, whoa. And then there's belt and lubas, but let's hit Jeff for a minute and let him talk about a little bit why the car system and why the method he integrates, Go for it, Jeff.
What I'm going to do is just, Jeff, why don't you just give, I guess, your background, and then we'll segue into your system and methodology.
Sure. As I said, I'm in my 20th year now, a police officer, currently a detective sergeant. And Kelly has blessed me with kind of being the international representative, international director of training for NSI, which is a big responsibility I don't take lightly, to say the least. Having run a few camps on the back end, right? Everyone from scheduling to cooks to bottle washers. It's quite a thing that he puts on every year. As for my background and what I'm into, I guess there's talking in that enforcement genre, there's certain courses and things. Force Science is an organization in the United States that's dedicated to doing research. And so, like peer-reviewed research on, for example, reaction time, how quickly one can start or react to a stimulus. All that stuff. And then turning back, how long does it take to actually perceive something? And that down the path of these a few classes. One is called the Methods of Instruction class. So if you're an instructor wanting to know motor learning, which physical skills is motor learning, you words for that, and that's what martial arts is. And now I've been able to, study, it's like the Advanced Force Science course, for example. It's 300 hours alone with. Like Dr. Tim Lee, the guy who wrote the book on motor learning and performance. Dr. Gary Klein, the gentleman who wrote the book on recognition, prime decision making. So that's when something is just occurring and we talk about maybe a flinch response or something. Well, recognition, prime decision making, or this naturalistic decision making of Dr. Gary Klein's is he studied firefighters, he studied firefighters, police, and military for how and why they make the decisions they do. And it's a very interesting pathway. It's not the purpose of this conversation, but the point being is there is, just like in the book, thinking fast and thinking slow. So there's system 1 and system 2 of thought. One where I can sit and think and articulate, make a decision. Some people would call that the OODA loop as well, kind of 2 seconds and beyond. But then there's one that happens just spontaneously. And I didn't realize that I was learning that from Datu in regards to kind of like allowing myself to just adapt and to flow in his words and terminology right from the get-go with movement. And movement is decision making. And then later on, I found these scientifically evidenced principles for how motor learning, physical skills are best taught, best practiced, and that has absolutely revolutionized how I do business now. I study, I train, I work out absolutely like a third of what I used to. And now, but I 100% more prioritize the recovery principles, meaning the understanding how sleep, motor learning are consolidated, understanding how to frame a cue card. I think of that like in a Rolodex. I don't know how young our audience is, but back before you
they might not be using a Rolodex anymore.
Right? Back before your iPhone had a contacts app, there was this Rolodex of cue cards. And
Oh,
he froze.
Damn.
Yeah, he's got
We dropped you, Jeff.
there's he's back, I think. Hey Jeff, your internet is glitchy. You're kind of coming in and you were going in and out there for the last like 20 seconds.
I apologize. There's
Actually,
I've tried to even hotspot it off my phone while we were waiting.
That's better now. Whatever you did. So
hold my tongue to the left, I guess.
yeah. We were on the Rolodex.
I'll just I'll sum it up and pass it over to you if you can hear me still. I don't want to take time away from this important conversation about the camp and getting there. There's all the time, and there's quite a few other people. So skill level independent. The camp is a great place to come, as a lot of the people in the chat will tell you. Paulo was there. Hopefully I'll get to see and train with him again soon. It's just a welcoming environment for all that. And I'd be happy to pontificate when my internet is better about what it is that I do and bring.
Yeah, we'll have to get, stick around though, because right now it's not, you're back in, so you're sounding and it looks good. So I definitely would like to hear more about what you do. I mean, just based on the OODA loop, and we were talking about, quick decision making as far as that, on that, definitely would like to hear more on that. So I want to just ask one more question, Jeff, while we still got you here and it's not glitchy. What will you be teaching this year at the camp?
Oh, well, whatever anyone wants. I'm always there to help refine. The things that I like and I'm captivated by are the things I didn't know. And so, I kind of pride myself on someone teaching something and being able to walk over to a group, seeing what they're doing, because knowledge builds on knowledge, and just helping them, iron sharpens iron, right? Fix the glitches, that type of thing. Because, Datu, Belton, these guys move so well that, when you're trying to replicate it, you're not always as safe because the timing's off or the shielding is off or something like that. And so, I happily provide that stuff. And also I pride myself on the things such as, you can work on your body, your mind, and your craft. Our craft in the arts, right? Our body, we kind of get what that means, but it's more than just knuckle push-ups. And then our mind, and I really 10x'd my ability, especially as a communicator, as an instructor, as a learner myself, but certainly as a performer, that in the environments that I work in, when I started working on my mind as an actual thing with actual tools. And so just helping people, you don't need any more techniques. I don't care what art you're from. What you need is, the ability to help change. And no one does that any better than Kelly Worden. Absolutely.
Yeah, I know. He can take 10 different arts and like one in a 2-minute showing. So, so Datu, sounds like you've got an impressive guy here that you brought up all these years, and it's going on his own, created his own system, methodology, and now you're bringing it back, kind of like full circle, huh?
Well, that is the approach. You're the best way you can learn is to teach. And so everybody's teaching at the camp. I often say, that's the true expression of tribal martial arts. You know, we kind of eliminate that militarized approach of, well, what rank are you? I don't know. You want to step out on the floor and find out, that type of thing. And it isn't even that. It ain't like I have to kick your ass. It's like, get out there and teach, and we'll see who knows what, you know. It really isn't about kicking your ass, because in reality, if I know you want to kick my ass, I'm probably going to distract you and slam your head in the floor and stomp on your foot so I don't do too much extensive damage. But this isn't about, a sporting event. Everything is based on real life experience, and the reality of conflicts aren't like, okay, let's square off. If you're already let's square off, you missed your opportunity to drop the asshole that apparently is in your face.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of learning curves that are misinterpreted in martial arts, and tribal is about, survival and the reality of that. And tribal teaching is about no different than living in your household. This is JKD in action. Your little brother is 5 years old, and your parents, they teach him how to empty the dishwasher. I mean, in essence, that's a skill set. How you put those dishes away, a safety factor, because there's stuff that can be broken, knives that have to be handled, that type of thing. So how is it martial arts isn't like that? It's because we've got into this weird trip that somebody with one stripe on their belt is superior than me in technical
and
skill.
has nothing to offer.
That's
right?
why I say, yeah, I mean, geez, I really have a hard time, watching some of the commercial schools, and an adult walks in and he's got a 14-year-old teaching him how to stretch. And dude, you know what? You still live at mama's house. So, you may have some physical elements, but mentally you're not where I'm at, that type of thing. And hey, I can appreciate, the performance aspects of martial arts. And that I do clarify martial arts as two areas of expertise: functional and performance. I know a lot of great practitioners that are amazing performers. Technically, better sidekick, better this, better that. As a matter of fact, I mean, when I went to Dr. Yip's, these guys were amazing technicians, especially in classical taekwondo out of Hong Kong. You could bet your ass that anybody doing taekwondo in Hong Kong better be good. And there was only two instructors in China. One was on, one side of the Yangtze River, and one was inner city Hong Kong. But those boys had to be serious players to integrate into Chinese martial arts. But I guess getting back to the point that your performance level doesn't necessarily mean you have life experience to pull it off. So, the camp is really about life experience, and that's what you're doing. And I allow everybody that especially has life experience, or those that don't, to partner up, so you may turn around and you're working with Bob Anderson or Jason Little or Belton Lubis, or, it doesn't matter. Now rotate, that type of thing. So, and then after the session, that 20 minutes, that 30 minutes, or that 2 or 3 hours in the evening, you've got somebody that you gravitated towards, and you can learn some real elements of survivability, hear some good life stories,
pick their brain,
gain some insight into everything. Dr. Brett was a naturopath. He was a rugby player. He was a competitive wrestler. He wrestled with Dan Severin during college. He was a former Ranger, you know. So a lot of things he could tell you. Why a foot trap and a body bump throws a neurological gyrograph in the top of the head off balance, and why drunks move the way they do, and how we disrupt that neurologically, take advantage of positional alignment, positional control, balance on minimal touch, just stuff like that, yeah, it's pretty intriguing. I often say if it wasn't my camp, I'd attend,
Hey,
Anyway.
if it wasn't mine, I think I would attend,
Yeah. I know it blew Paulo's mind when he showed up, and I didn't know who Paulo was, and Paulo admits over the years he's changed quite a bit since he came on the scene.
Yeah.
Form is bullshit, this and that. When you're a practitioner, maybe you just spar, you're not teaching or anything.
Right.
It's always different from the outside looking in. When you start teaching, you realize, how am I supposed to teach this? And I was the same way. I really had an attitude. I pissed off a lot of people, but yeah, I pretty much told Paulo, I don't care who you are. I don't know you from Adam. So, hold on to your hat. You're going to go for a fun little ride. So.
Embrace with two hands.
Yeah.
That's wow. So, all right, Jeff. Well, we still got you. I'm gonna try to get, we're gonna get something out of you. All right. So, Jeff, you're obviously law enforcement. That so. I looked over, your bio and all that. I found it was fascinating, to be honest with you. I mean, which I think it would behoove of me to get you on a show. But at any rate, what far as I know you're in the gun community, and one of the things I want to ask you, just something I noticed, drawing under pressure. In other words, I see a lot of gun guys. They can nail a target, from wherever, just incredible marksmanship, incredible. However, though, why is a good chunk of the community so reluctant to practice drawing under pressure? Or am I wrong in that assumption?
Well, you just threw a nice loaded question at me. So I saw where you were going, and then it turned into a curveball. But all right. So what I do?
I can do
that. I can see that. I'll come on your show again, perhaps.
Jeff, I promise.
Right. So, if you're asking me to tell you what's in the minds of others, I know that's not what you're doing. Not to tell me why the community, but let me talk about this. So there's a book called Training at the Speed of Life, Volume 1, and the guy who wrote its name's Ken Murray, and it just so happened that Datu's been my mentor for many, many years, and blessed to have that relationship even beyond that. And I found this guy Ken Murray, and he's the grandfather of scenario-based training. He invented it, and he also invented those little paint cartridges way back in the day, FX marking cartridges for a company called Simunition. Well, when I met him, I didn't know what I didn't know about reality-based training or experiential learning. And so we can get into that kata and sparring and form and all the rest of that talk. And that's a very valuable talk to have. But what I'm telling you right now is that, in fact, it was just a few weeks back, I was helping Ken to teach one of his classes. He does a 5-day instructor school for instructors only in reality-based training. And that was up in Tacoma. We did that for the military and for the Tacoma guys, PD. And so I got to sit down because, of course, I brought Kelly Worden and Ken Murray together and just sat back and listened to them talk, right, which was an amazing experience. Amazing experience for guys who have been in these industries for, tens and tens of years, right? And so, but one of the things, if I think that what you're asking, so I know, and it does no value to say his name, but if I mentioned this competition shooter's name, everyone would know, or a quick DuckDuckGo would let you know who it is, right? And I could say that he would be at 10 yards. He wanted to get himself to the unconscious competent level that he could, at 10 yards, draw and hit a 1-inch target in under a second. And I watched him do it. Like we all have. We've all seen that happen, but I watched him do it as a replicating consistent skill set. It blows my mind. But then he was in a scenario, and I drew my gun, right, 500% faster. The numbers boggling to the mind because of recognition prime decision making, right? Creating cue cards, heuristics, shortcuts, mental triggers, things of that nature. That it's not just about getting your gun out. Experts know what to focus on and when. They also know what not to get captured by in an environment that it's called bottom up. It's driving you from the bottom up, trying to capture your attention. And I really believe that Bill Lewinsky of Force Science also says, attention is the currency of our age. And so one of the things that we talked about in NSI, Kelly's been talking about forever, I just didn't know to the depth of which, because I didn't have experience yet, because I was such a young man, that, when you need to focus on what's important in the situation, you can use emotion to regulate yourself up when you need to hit the door, for example, and down regulate most of the time is another one. And so these are the tools, and this is the conceptuality that I'm talking about. When you're talking about just drawing your gun out, I mean, I absolutely can make you shit hot and awesome with firearms. I can do that. But if what you're talking about is self-defense or being shit hot and awesome in a gunfight, I want you to react to the information given quickly, get off the X, right, left of bang, so to speak. And these phrases are spouted. But I'm telling you, I've never seen anyone who knows how to teach it on purpose. And that is what we're missing. Guys will go through selections and recruit for the SWAT or the whatever, right? And, sure, they get to that level, and a lot of people didn't, so they're not in that group. But what if I was able to tell you that we don't have to lower the standards, but we can change the verbiage, we can change the experiential training through how we articulate to people and reverse engineer from a goal what we want. And so I've been able to do that with Ken Murray all the way to Australia with the tier 1, SASR soldiers, getting in a couple of weeks, we're training, well, not in a couple of weeks, we train them to train others. And in a couple of weeks, they're getting, 200, 300, 500% increase in shot speed and accuracy in decision making. Like these, and this is, I won't bet my paycheck on it. I'll bet my pension on it. And so, but I mean, the foundation of what Kelly has shared with us over the years and allowed me to discover again for myself, is the foundation of that thinking, acting, moving, and just allowing the freedom of seeking out error. So the Water and Steel Camp is a crucible for that. There is such high-level practitioners there, yet zero ego. Seriously, zero ego. And I'm the international director of training. So if anyone's got an ego there, come and tell me, and they will be dealt with.
They'll be immediately escorted.
So, yeah. And so, but where error is what we're looking for. We're looking to find how did that go. We're looking to become better. I go to that camp. I know what I know how to do. I want to know what you know how to do so I can take those pieces. Right.
So you can be a better version of yourself. Yeah. I know it was my fault that I digressed. My question. I do want to bring you on though for an episode if you'd be so willing.
I'd absolutely be happy to. It'd be my pleasure.
And I actually appreciate it. And thank you, Datu, for bringing him on here.
That's kind of why I brought him on. It's not just Filipino martial arts. Again, we are actively pursuing our tribal existence of interaction with others and a coherence of principles, and that applies to everything in life, not just martial arts. People that just do martial arts as a byproduct have missed the purpose of all those elements that we practice, mind, body, and spirit. That applies to everything from communications. We fly off the handle sometimes, but, our emotional stability can be enhanced through the martial experience that we've learned out
Absolutely.
on the floor or during training or interacting with somebody that's really cocky or somebody that's just out of control. That kind of understanding of movement and uh, conversation applies in the parking lot, just like it does in the training gym, and just a lot of things, mind, body, spirit, man, our spirit. That's why I say natural spirit. People in 1980 were like, oh, that's pretty esoteric. Whoa, and it's like, well, not that deep, man. If you're injured, you're going to have to adapt.
Yeah.
And what's more adaptable than natural? For JKD, I often say, the goal is to look like Bruce. Well, if you're 6'2", 240 pounds, why are you even bothering? You're
Yeah.
not going to be Bruce. You're, all the little, all that stuff ain't going to make any difference. The same thing, I'm not going to be Ramey Pracis. I can take Ramey's teaching method, and that's what I took. And there's, beautiful technical connections. Wally J told me, he goes, man, you're one of the only guys that can actually teach and move like Ramey. I said, yeah, but I could also move like Jesse, and I can also move when I want a Muay Thai but it's each art represents a moment in time based on what the confrontation or what the uh, what the art needs as far as confrontation. If it's in the bathroom, on a slick floor, I'm probably not going to do Muay Thai and I'm not going
Yeah.
to do Sambo. I'm going to probably be doing more of a Silat type of thing, evasive mobility based disruption and, that type of stuff. So the art needs to be expressed internally based on how much you've been exposed to, what strategies work for you naturally, and what level of intent is your spirit. So
Yeah.
there's things like when I created the wounded bear syndrome. Wounded bear means somebody's got a psychological edge on you or a physiological edge, or a strategic edge. So you're wounded because you're trying, a guy that confronts you, he's got something on his mind. He has intent. So
Mm.
we're psychologically, trying to process this. Well, we're processing it. He's
Yeah.
got his game. So we're
Yeah.
at a disadvantage, Now, if it's an injury, we're at a disadvantage. So, same thing with your bodyguard 24/7. You could be alone and you're still a bodyguard because there's a lot of things to lose if you get into a situation and it gets out of control financially, physically, and, a lot of other aspects. But, so those are all part of what natural spirit is. And opening the door and learning from others is probably one of the most important things because,
Yeah.
hey, I didn't have to go to prison to know that some of the people I hung out with and the shit that I was doing could lead to prison because some of them guys went to prison, or worse, they're dead.
Yeah.
Street crime, street violence, all those things that are unpredictable and uncontrollable unless you control it from the get-go. A lot of assessment, and martial arts provides that learning curve. So,
I
yeah.
think it's wow. I always kind of knew, in other words, like you look at a lot of camps, everybody, it's kind of based on the physical aspect, meaning that, okay, you're going to go there and you're trained, and there could be a guest instructor there. You're going to either get a few more, branches off the tree that you can add to what you're doing. It's probably going to be, same system or maybe some similar systems. But your camp sounds just incredibly unique in everything you just spoke on and what Jeff shared, and that you're really trying to also have people tap not just in the physical aspect of their training, what they're doing there, or the new information they're getting, but rather like the whole overall experience and all that. I just think that's fascinating. I think you're onto something that I think it's great, and you've been doing it for 43 years, so obviously you're doing something right. I think it's just incredible. Wow, and
Well, may I
oh,
just
please,
add to that, if you don't mind,
oh,
that
please, yeah.
another one of the unique things that Datu brings is that he's just able to take someone and just see what their natural attributes are. Maybe they have technical attributes, but what they're naturally inclined to be doing, how they're able to be acting, whether that's in close confines, stepping on feet or not, whatever that might be. And he's able to build rapport with them, and then he increases their competence, which increases their confidence, which increases
Nice.
their confidence, and it's this vicious circle that we perpetuate in everything we do. And he just does it. And more than that, it's how we've learned just tacit knowledge, right? Because he's never just sat us down and said, this is the way we do it. It's just the way that we end up doing that. It's not come in and now you stand this way and now you punch that way or anything like that. If it works for you, then adapt it and use it. And here's how you can take that and blend it into something more, and that's what
I think it's just
why would you want to be a
amazing.
part of it?
Yeah, I think it's amazing. I remember going to a camp in early 2000. I'm not gonna say the system and all that, but we were all lined up militarily, and even back then, when I was, in my young maturity as a Filipino martial arts, I remember back then thinking like, this is odd. I mean, like, this is not embracing like, enjoyment or flexibility to be myself or intermingle. There was this military aspect to it. You know what I mean? And I'll never forget that. And it really turned me off to further camps because my impression was there's going to be this hierarchy. And if you step out of line in the hierarchy or you didn't walk by somebody and bow, just I'm throwing things out there for examples of what my mental inventory was post that camp. But I only am bringing this up and sharing my experience because obviously it seems the complete opposite of what's going on at Dr. Kelly's camp. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Well, there's no doubt about that. There's canoes down there, so I tell people it's up to you to come
Paddle
into the
fighting.
training session. If there's something, you want,
Mm.
is like, and, say you didn't want to work on pad drills from some good combination of Western boxing or Muay Thai. So, but you wanted some staff. Well, let me give you somebody, even if he's not like Charlie Wilson, who's just an amazing staff practitioner. Charlie was
Absolutely.
one of Joe Simonette's guys. He's also head of corrections tactics for the state of Washington. So he knows what works. And
Mm.
actually, corrections has more leeway on what they teach compared to what the law enforcement have to teach or are willing or capable to teach alongside departmental procedures. So Charlie's just an amazing technician with the staff. And so, hey, you want more staff and you came here for that, then you got a private lesson. You just walk away from the camp, go down to the dock or go wherever you want on the property. And,
Mm.
because we're right there on the waterfront. Now, our old camp at Tanglewood Island, you'd have to come across on a boat. So, of course, I brought my boat out there, so a phone call to get you there. But if we were reliant on the camp coordinator who managed the camp, that guy'd be shit faced by 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So you're taking your life in your hand.
I'll
It
get you over
really
here.
is a trip like Master Han's Island. You can't get on or off unless you got a boat. You surely don't want to swim in the torrential waters of the Puget Sound. There's so many riptides and different things like that. So, but
Mm.
yeah, Raft Island's got a bridge, so you can you can take off. And we got it's just a great environment. Lukey being from Oakland, California, in that area, he was just always amazed that the deer were right at the bottom of the hill while we were working at the top. Or
Okay.
he'd go down to the dock and there'd be a half a dozen otters, cracking clams down on the beach. And different things like that. And
Otter.
it's really a cool environment. Yeah, wish I owned that piece of property, but they're very open to us, and we've been there for 20 plus years, or maybe even longer. So yeah, it's a great opportunity. Amazing people attend.
Sounds it.
Great stories. Bob Anderson, he was executive protection for Lech Walesa, president of Poland, King of Morocco, things like that. He was head of security for Johnson and Johnson, and he took over. Great story. He took over $500 million worth of rare art from New Jersey to Castle Warsaw. And gosh, I mean, just the stories, real life, serious stuff. Being in motorcades that were targeted when they were trying to bring democracy into Poland. The communists didn't want it. Motorcade got blown up. Anderson was right in the middle of it. The bombings in Europe, he was doing executive protection, and right there when maybe what we would call a mall or a shopping center was targeted and, blown up, having to take care of his clients, I mean, so yeah, he was a bodyguard 24/7, and that meant in every aspect of it. So great stories there. We brought God, I can't recall the doctor's name right off, but he came in and did a lecture. He was training Olympic athletes, and to take seconds off of their swimming, to be higher performance through mental focus and stuff like that. So we brought all kinds of people in to lecture,
that is awesome.
Yeah, so we really kind of expand the horizons to make people better practitioners, not more style.
Like
something to do with it.
Whatever you're doing, instead of going there and you're getting a huge, truckload of more information. But how about like doing better what you already got? You know what I mean? And performing better.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, there again, that's your JKD instinct. But I've seen JKD guys, just trying harder to do this and harder to do that. A lot of martial arts is imitating. You're imitating, you want to be just like that. My answer to that is, well, as good as you are at imitating somebody else, Bruce Lee maybe, how good would you be if you imitated yourself?
I know. So, robbing your own journey of I know. We all, I guess one time or another, guilty of that, or when you're young and you want to aspire to your hero, and of course you end up making noises and trying to move like that. Guilty as charged. Not anymore though. Not anymore. I just want to establish that.
Well, I think at some degree, if I'm trying to get a technique down, I'm guilty of it. I would literally think and try to move just like Praesus did, just so I could get his understanding of. Next thing you know, I'm speaking broken Taglish, throwing my Filipino accent in there to, even further the expression, or something with Jesse, or something with Lukey, something with Professor Trigg.
That's right. You have him out there as well, right?
Oh yeah, he's been my friend for 45 years. Same as Anderson, same as Keating, all right about that same time. And hey, I wasn't always this soft-spoken, easygoing guy. I said some shit that I was like, oh yeah, somebody's gonna pull that up on a video. Yeah, that was my phone. Somebody calling me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but so I've been outspoken. I've been a little bit of everything, and that's part of the experience, and that's part of sharing my faults with people and go, hey, if I can overcome this. And Paulo's a classic example of that. He's been honest with people. Boy, I sure stepped on it, a year ago. I sure, his growth is exponential.
Look at his transition in 2 years.
For sure. And, Jeff's a classic example of that too. Just he's learned from, I like to say, learn from the mistakes of others, to be able to recognize those elements of somebody else's personality and know that you were there too, and then correct that in yourself, and then help that individual maybe realize it for himself. So there's a lot of stuff happening. And, like I said, a lot of my guys, or a lot of NSI guys, they were here last week. Jeff was here teaching a firearms to the military, or a course to the military and the police department. But the following weekend, he had a group of the guys out at a private range. And, my guys are just constantly learning from Jeff. Jeff's the international director of training. There's a reason I did that when I went in and had kidney failure and cancer. I needed somebody that could fill that void, and more than just the physical aspect, So what say thee, Jeff?
Yeah. So Jeff, I'm just curious. Again, I look at your gun. I can't wait to bring you on, and thank you, Datu, for having him join us. But what do you think of FMA? Like obviously Leonard Trigg's been there. Way back in, Lucky, Lakai you had there, some other phenomenal FMA figures. But overall, do you train a lot or incorporate it a lot, or?
Yeah, I came from the unique angle into it.
Literally angle?
Yeah, and that I came from, through NSI. My base art was back in the day, was Budo Taijutsu, was like going to Japan, Masaki Hatsumi, that type of thing. And so there was a lot of differences going on at that time. Stayed in it till the Godan test. But then I found that through Datu, I was getting good at fighting back then. Like at the end of every session, I was noticeably better in some way, shape, or form. Whereas this other path seemed to be this very long, drawn-out path that the Grandmaster was saying. That was his point, is that it was 10 years or something, because there's not a fight on Monday. But then FMA as itself, I'm just learning about it because I never knew that was FMA. I just knew what natural spirit was, and here I am with Dr. Brett Song. Here I am with exactly, and so it's just all I've ever known. And now I'm learning that when I do it like that, that's an expression of Silad, and when I do it like that, that's an expression of. I just see what other people are doing, and have a. I'm not going to say it's intuitive, because it's not. You could see via their movement where more efficiency could be bled out of it, or sharpen that tip, right? That type of idea. So I think it's a wonderful expression personally, and it's helped me. It is part of who and what I am and do. I just couldn't say that that's the FMA tattoo right there or not.
No. I'm just curious. Yeah. Like, obviously, you having all this exposure with these phenomenal people, being at these camps, and that. I was just curious on your lens of it and that, but no, that's fascinating. So, all right, Datu, for the folks who are watching. Day one. So you come in there, like, what's it like? You're coming in on the Friday, you're just getting settled. There's a training, lectures. What goes on?
Let me start with that part, because Datu doesn't do what we do. We land there, right? And so the camp is a little bit of a trip to get to it. But once you're there, you have your lodgings, you have excellent food, and there's always someone running into town, which is literally 12 minutes to a Safeway or restaurants or something like that.
And deer walking by.
No, and I'm not just pumping its tires. It's a beautiful, beautiful time. Very excited this year because as Datu will talk about the chef in a minute. But yeah, so once you're there, you're good. You can always get a ride or something like that.
Yeah, 12 minutes away, not too far if you want to
Totally.
get okay.
Totally.
All right, so Datu, I'm flying in on a Friday. I've never been, so what? I'm coming in there. I'm going to see you, obviously. You're going to greet me.
Yeah. Like the Canadians will get a limousine and they'll all roll in like, executives. But other guys will get a rental car and maybe they'll coordinate with somebody and they'll split it, whatever. They get to the camp and, you got a couple hours, get registered, choose your cabin, so to speak. They're group cabins with bathrooms and shower facility, and then the main lodge, that type of stuff. And then usually first workout's at 11. Registration starts at 9. First workout 11. We got lunch at 12:30 to 1, or we'll give you an hour break in between that. Then it goes 15-minute break, workout, 15-minute break, workout, 15-minute break, workout, dinner, hour break, workout. And when it gets dark, we clear the tables and stack up the chairs, and we use the lodge in the center. And, it's quite roomy, actually. We're not going to do staff inside the lodge with 40, 50, 60 people, but we could do close quarter engagement stuff. And, or at that time, depending on how hard we worked, we could do lectures. And then there's a big, complete walk around deck on the lodge, and the windows open. You're out on the deck and you're doing the workout out there. It's no different. How much space does it take to get your ass beat? Not much, right? So it doesn't matter where we happen to be, or we stay outside because it's just a beautiful night, and we're under the stars, and at the same time, or we go down to the dock, and we'll work out down on the dock. It's a huge dock, and a big T-shaped, L-shaped dock, and how much daylight do you need? I mean, you don't want to do things that's for sensitivity training, but it's not like it's pitch dark, that type of stuff. But, the meals are just amazing, and we always have great chefs. And
it's amazing. You have chefs. That's like,
yeah. I mean, they're guys that people that cater weddings and do all that. So yeah,
it's always on, and the great part of it is that, if you feel like sitting down because you literally want to take some notes, or you're
no pressure,
you want to do it, but you want to be there, it's absolutely to your pace.
Not a big deal. Like, get
that session's done. Yeah. As soon as that session's done, though, because you needed that piece, or how did that go? There's 10 guys there, and you just film it, or you just write it down, or whatever.
Awesome,
so you're the only one getting in the way of your growth.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's that you can have the flexibility. You want to jot some things down and record something. And I can't believe chefs. So when you have these chefs come in, are they basically, depending obviously on the amount you have, they're just cooking for everyone, pending?
Yeah. If like Professor Trigg's a vegetarian, really strict. So, we have vegetarian dishes. We prefer that people let us know prior to.
Yeah.
The camp is set up, though, so that, I've got sleep apnea, so I don't particularly care sleeping with even when I'm doing seminar circuit or going to a seminar, and I bring somebody with me as a driver or whatever. Hey, I get a separate room, so I like my privacy. So people grab a hotel. I put Trigg in a hotel because at 6'5", 6", most of the bunks probably don't fit him. He's probably he's probably 250, something like that. And he's lean for a dude that big. So, I get him a hotel, and he runs back and forth to the camp. And so there's bed and breakfast, there's those things, and then the price is you're just there for the training, or you're there for the training and the food, or you're there for the whole camp. So it's split up that way.
Mm.
And so, I mean, I'm being courteous. I know there's some other camps that may be in a cow pasture, and you get a sack lunch, and you're in charge of everything else. But this
Mm.
is you can show up, do the whole camp until it's time for you to leave, and that's pretty cool too. Uh, when you consider the cost of food, cost
Especially
of
today, right?
lodging and all that. I mean, there's guys that pitch a tent. There's guys that'll sleep out on the deck just because, like, wow, hey, I brought an air mattress, I got my sleeping
Mm.
bag. It's not. There's no maid. You bring your sleeping bag and your toiletries, that type of stuff. But yeah, an air mattress, I'd be sleeping out on the deck myself. I mean, there's plenty of privacy. Um,
Lots of people bring
so
their RVs or their trailers
The
because
RV,
there's
I was
lots
gonna
of
say,
space for
right?
that. Lots
yeah,
of space for that. I mean, the cabins are heated, hot when there's hot water, all the rest. If you want an Airbnb or a hotel, it's 10 minutes away.
Yeah, it's no big
yeah,
deal, right? That's what you prefer. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, it's pretty amazing actually. It's really a cool facility, and so we enjoy that aspect of it. Uh, just the fact that there's a groundskeeper, and
Yeah.
every year we see improvement to the property.
Just a chef. I don't know why I'm stuck on the chef. I don't
Yeah.
know, but
Well,
I
I mean,
guess.
yeah, like I said, they're
Brisket,
all
we've
yeah, all
roasted
the
pigs
chefs
out
that we've
there.
had,
Yeah.
you know, all the chefs that we've had. Well, this last one was there for I think 12 years, something like that. And then she did, you know, Sean Shuey got married a couple of years ago, and I show up at the wedding, and there's a chef from the camp. He made friends, or his wife made friends with
Oh, okay.
the camp cook, and that's what she does. She caters and that type of thing. So, yeah, it's a pretty cool network of everything that we do. And then Paul Inman at Vulcan Knife. A lot of times, right before camp, because we were still in town, we met down at Vulcan Knife, go through the forge, look and see what everybody's, what my people have been working on as far as blade creativity, what Paul does. Um, Brian Borgelt still owns Bullseye, the building. There's a range there. You can come in a day early, hook up with one of the guys, do some shooting. You can stay a day late, hook up with one of the
Mm.
guys, do some shooting. Some guys come in from Europe, and they want some private training, so they can arrange that before getting here, that type of stuff. And you know, um, yeah, and even in my private training, yeah, I cross hands with people, but it depends on what they want. You know,
Mm.
um, I'll be like, okay, well, we'll schedule 4 hours, and you want some serious close quarter stuff. I'll have two of the guys that are really really good at stuff
Yeah.
like that, and have them be the assistants or whatever. So you're getting that unique element isolated. And
Mm.
I'm not anybody's sparring partner anymore at 70. Geez,
Yeah.
I really want to just provide as much information. I'll still engage. I'll knife spar or stick spar or whatever, but ain't my goal to kick my own ass. I got other shit to do once the camp's over, right? So
So wow, wow. So okay, Sunday, obviously Saturday, tons of training, meals, training, more training. Sunday, when things end on Sunday?
you got that, Jeff?
Yeah. Well, so just to be clear, say it in one. Typically the first session, when you come and register on the Friday, you're hitting around noon. So it depends if you're flying in. Just contact us, and we'll let you know if you're going to miss or not that first session. Don't worry about that stuff. Get the ticket that you can afford, and then when you're
Sure.
leaving, typically, we're running sessions. Of course, we'll do the morning session because it's like beautiful breakfast all the time. Coffee's always on, which is wonderful. And then we'll do a couple of sessions, and then we'll hit a lunch, and then we'll do a cabin cleanup and check in. And usually that's kind of when that's happening. I know people have to leave when they have to leave, but once again, just if you're coming in, don't not come in because you're not sure what the sessions are going to be or not, or what timings or not. We'll make sure that you're good that way. And then of course, CTAC, if you're flying out that day or not, it's up to you. But CTAC can be a bit of a, got to get there early, get through the lines and that type of thing. But no, you're going to have a lot of training, as Datu says. More than once we're on the dock doing something, whether that's a little bit of kuntao or machete. More than once you're going to have an exposure to just so much. And it's all on video. Like, they're all captured on the Water and Steel videos, every session, painstakingly edited and the rest of it. So there is so much footage there. It's crazy.
So yeah, actually, Buddha Brothers is coming in this year.
Oh, Buddha Brothers.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but yeah, for Sunday we get up early and do breakfast, and then we do a couple workouts before lunch, and it's usually a bigger lunch. Then of course we give out certificates of attendance, recognition moments in time. Then we do the camp cleanup, make sure your cabins are clean and that type of stuff. And then we do one more workout, and we're just kind of wandering out. Everybody helps load the trucks up. And, I mean, I used to take out, borrow a couple trailers and bring a truck, and I bring less stuff this time. We always have a couple silent fighters because there's more than anybody could even imagine what's going on with the silent fighter. The same thing could be said with the Mook Jong, but the diversity of a silent fighter, I've worked both. If you Mook Jong, you surely don't want to engage it with a aluminum or steel training knife. You don't want to beat your Mook Jong up with double sticks or a staff, but you can pretty much hit a silent fighter with a baseball bat, and it'll just stand there and look at you like, is that all you got? So we have some good equipment there, and again, having Belton teach and Jeff teach, Bob Anderson teach, Charlie Wilson, Professor Trigg, it's just wow.
Right up there. Wow.
Yeah, and that's not counting the people that are coming in that have a multitude. Alex Korper come in from the Netherlands, and wow, what an amazing Aikijitsu, Tai Chi, joint manipulation. He was a Kyoshinkai practitioner early on. Just some military guys that just have more stuff up their sleeve than you could even imagine, unassuming. People like Colonel Chris, that his intellectual understanding of movement and technical efficiency is beyond most people. He's a fighter pilot, so he plays that down. But boy, Jeff could touch a little bit on, the diversity of Colonel Chris, Josh Russell, competitive shooter. Just, he came into the group through the Special Forces. He wasn't Special Forces. He was just doing competitive shooting, IPSC shooting, and his dad was an Israeli combatant. And, a lot of real life experience stuff that, it just becomes part of the experience.
It's just so, again, I mean, you got all these different people coming in, and just what's really neat, the lectures, like you might have somebody come in and speak on a subject matter that is so illuminating that people leave there like just better informed, or not just physical, and nothing wrong with the physical aspect of it, of course. I mean, that's great, but I just think the addition of the lectures, of having these special people come in and speak on a subject that's dear to their heart or just they're very apt to speak on it, I think it's just incredible.
Yeah, I think it was 2 years ago. Bob Anderson did a simulation of bomb recognition, and I think he had hid something, or that type of thing. One of the other guys, Ian Allen, brought in his team from nightclub security. He was head of security for a Russian after hours club for 8 years. So how
Nothing
do
went on
you
there.
yeah, how do you control a room out of control? A brawl breaks out. How do you clear the room? How do you protect your wife or your loved ones in those type of situations? Jeff
Mm.
has talked about home intrusion stuff, and you can touch on
Well,
that,
and
Jeff. Anything like
even
that?
even more, even more is that we're all trying to optimize, right? So I mean, talking about vision, attention, memory, talking about motor learning, talking about what's the mechanism that lies underneath block versus random practice as to why that's a good thing. So how can I train if I've got X number of hours and my goal is something? It's really holistically looking at how to lead a better life, right? Emotional regulation.
Overall,
What does that do for us, right? Yeah, absolutely. And so,
this is
shockingly, I
more.
can
Wow.
talk about that for a while. But yeah, it's
Yeah,
exactly
well, that's
what.
why we're going to bring you on. We're
Yeah,
going to,
yeah,
but just
definitely. And what Jeff was saying there, how do you train efficiently? People miss the whole, a lot of great Filipino practitioners, and they don't know much about the staff. And what was the primary weapon back in the ancient times? It was a two-handed lance or a club. I mean,
mm,
staffs and spears were long before short, mid-range weapons, and so
mm,
the developmental aspect. Anything you do in FMA, I can show it to you in staff, and it's unified body mechanics. It's not singular action. You can swing a stick and a knife and just do it with your arm. Body mechanics come out of dual practice. So if
that's
you if you look at staff, you're really doing a spot of the gun if you're using both ends of that staff. And then the mobility and the distance bearing factor. And then when you eliminate the staff and the double knife or the sword and the dagger, that's your empty hand method. That's your kun tao. I've had lot masters go, how do you know our lot? I said, it's all in the staff. Even though lot is known that, the blade is what lot, the life of the blade. Well, no, I could teach you
mm,
blade all day with a staff, and people are like, whoa. So I mean, it's just in Western boxing and Wing Chun, it's all in the staff, and grappling and joint manipulation. All those dynamics are within the
yeah.
staff.
I mean, I don't disagree. I'm starting, I'm guilty, late bloomer in it, but I've been really diving into it, and I'm enjoying it. But much to your point, I can see it. Like, yeah, obviously now if you're with stick, knife, and all that, just by virtue of the staff movements. I mean, everything is going to be increased as far as the power generation and all that. And so, yeah, I'm enjoying it. But
Yeah,
late bloomer.
cool,
Yeah.
right on.
I'm guilty.
That's all right. Hey, we're all guilty of that. And you
Yeah.
said something about branches on the tree. Change that thought process and, really embrace Dr. Brett's Sambo wheel. It just makes so much sense
I know. Remember
that
you when you came
anything that
on
you
there.
might feel isn't quite complete. All you're doing is adding another spoke in that wheel.
And that wheel.
You can exist on a Mustang wheel with 3 spokes, or you can go to 5 spokes, or you can go to 7 spokes, and you can go to, you know, and then you got wire wheels, and that's all those subsystems. That's those minute elements, and it doesn't have to be just physical. As Jeff is saying, on a psychological level, those are key spokes. Those are more essential spokes. Oh, I need more technique. No, you need to stop and think.
No, that's what I mean. Like I want like what Jeff can give. Like I don't need more techniques. I want to be able to do what I do better, more efficiently, less taxing on me, whether it's the thought generation or whatever might have you. But yeah, but much to your point, the spokes being, maybe on the mental aspect of it, or better performance and that. Yeah, but much to your point,
Well,
not the techniques. Yeah.
it's a better way to dissect and describe what it is you're doing. Branches on a tree are random. Where do they grow? Spokes can be placed to strengthen the core,
Point.
to strengthen the hub, to stabilize the wheel.
Yeah.
Good metaphor.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah. Especially the Mustang wheel.
Yeah. No doubt. Well, I'm more like a Cadillac with wire wheels, baby.
Oh no, I'm a '60s muscle car guy.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
But wow, this has been awesome. I mean, last question. How many, on average, just generally speaking, how many attendees you generally get? Generally speaking.
Jeff, you want to hit that?
Average? I guess for the first and last days, I would say 50 to 70, and then the Saturdays, sometimes it's, I mean, some guys just come in for the one day because they're local, right? That kind of thing. So, anywhere from, again, that's 60, 70 to 100 or whatever. I don't know, but and then sometimes it's lower, sometimes it's back up. But COVID, of course, kicked the crap out of it.
I was thinking, you guys were going to say 40 or 50. I mean, if you're getting 70, that's incredible. That's
on the Saturday. So we're hoping to get back up there now that, because COVID's
done.
down,
Yeah,
right? People just got to get back in the habit of, oh yeah, it's so good once I get here. How many times I get travel. That? Once I got here again, oh yeah, I remember how much I love it. So
wow, that's incredible. I would have never guessed 70 even around there. That's incredible. Wow.
Yeah, a lot of those guys are all instructors, and that's an interesting point. The guys that are green, can just the average guy come in? Oh yeah, of course. And who's going to be your training partner? Probably an instructor from another system or a method that, I mean, Belton's a classic example. We had one of the seminars and a guy showed up and, nobody's wearing belts. And I said, hey, Belton, he's unfamiliar with it. Could you give him, hook up with him, be his partner? Okay, cool. Later on, he asked me, who was that guy? I like 7th or 8th degree of Kempo. And he's like, well, really? So, you never know who's what. I'm green when it comes to firearms compared to Jeff. When it comes to executive protection and security, I'm pretty green compared to Bob Anderson. He's been security for Harrison Ford and the president of Poland and shit like that. He's telling you things, that awareness factor, the way Jeff outlines, what's really going on around you, what's the lighting, what's the environment, who are you recognizing? Do we know who's coming into the camp? Who's in our immediate proximity? Those are all things that we need to know when we're walking into a grocery store. And that applies to the gym.
What's going on, right?
And Anderson, like I said, he did that recognition, bomb recognition. What's different in this room than it was before? Everybody leaves the room. Maybe he arranged the furniture or something. What's different than it was before? And that's part of what we're trying to, understand, assimilate, and then, process. So, I mean, martial movement's cool. Wow, did you see that back fist? Yeah. Watch this footwork. Yeah. Okay. Go in the bathroom. What's different? I mean, there's just so much to that you take with you. That's the key. Not like you don't need one more technique. You want to realize that one technique has more things you can do with it.
That's the real thing here is what we're talking about. Like, let's be honest, like return on investment, like it costs to go. And so the thing about that is that what really kept me coming back was that the supporting network, and I could go away, especially I just buy the videos from that camp, right? Because there's my notes, and I could practice purposefully and get better for the next time. I could, and not that we're not out of contact or anything like that. I got guys sending me videos all the time and asking me questions and whatever else. What book? What thing? How's this movement? But return on investment's the key there. You're not learning more to collect more stuff. You're learning how to think about how you think, which has never even been conceptualized before. And once you know how to do that, you have a framework. And once you have a framework, you have everything.
Yeah. Everything you're talking about is like, that's what I'm trying to zone into now. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, music to my ears, which is why you're going to be coming on the show. So we all can hear it.
We'll talk about it, Dean. Yeah, you're doing a good service, Dean. You know, I had a radio show live every week on the Edge, you know, for 7 years or 8 years. I mean, I got all these cool radio shows on cassette. And one of the most intriguing ones was a doctor of psychology for the Department of Corrections, most violent offenders. I mean, from Charlie Manson on down. And he just outlined all these psychological behaviors and how to recognize them and all those things.
Fascinating.
And, yeah, you know, so you're in a good position. And I think I talked to you about that sometimes. On the Edge, it allowed me to do everything. Guys coming back from Afghanistan and Iraq, colonels, editors. The movie Year of Living Dangerously with Mel Gibson. Did you ever get to see that? Sigourney Weaver. It was about the killing of Christians in Indonesia. But that movie Year of Living Dangerously, well, that's Kerry Collison. It was his life story. He grew up in Australia, then he became a special operative for the Queen, basically. And then from there, he was the author of Siddhartha publications. So he started publishing other people's books. Well, he'd call me up and go, hey, could you do this? Could you do that? Really cool dude. He was a cross between Neil Diamond and Roger Moore. You know, and I was like, dude, you're too smooth. Stay away from my wife. You know, guy was so smooth. He was so smooth. You know, stay away from my wife. You know, good looking, smooth. But yeah, you know, the Indonesian, when he went public with all his research and everything, the Indonesian government, Sukarno, I think the Sukarno regime put a worldwide hit on him, $5 million. And of course, that was back in the 80s. So that was a good chunk of change, worth about 40 million today. So yeah. But, you know, you have the opportunity to, you know, expand your show to a guy like Jeff, who does do Filipino martial arts. You know, Natural Spirit is based off of how Ramey taught Filipino martial arts, but I applied it, you know, especially when I started teaching special forces. I wasn't active duty by any stretch. I didn't even do military. I tried to join. That's a different story. But young criminal, bad street kid. But that's why they hired me, you know, because I was streetwise and they wanted that technical element of the Edge. And so it's just amazing that you can expand on that and embrace a teaching method, again, tribal teaching, as opposed to this militarized approach, because, you know, you want to teach people to be better people, you know, and I'm a testament to that shit. You know, if it wasn't for martial arts, I'd probably be in prison or dead, or I'd be president of an outlaw bike club. You know, there's no doubt about that. I could probably still walk into those shoes, but
they're ready to hire you.
Yeah, but that's not it. You know. But,
no, I definitely could be bring him on. I'll be able to tie a show with him. That'll be the least of worries. I mean, whether you know, I'll see. Yes, it's going to be FMA.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, everything, you know, in that regard, what isn't FMA? I mean, what martial art, what discipline isn't or can't be integrated into FMA? There isn't one, you know. You look at Sikadon coming out of the Philippines, and it's distinctly Taekwondo with sea life footwork,
Mm,
Shaolin hand striking, sea lot sweeps.
yeah.
But it's Taekwondo kicking. Even
Like,
the Kung Tao out of the Philippines really
yeah.
looks like Shotokan, but it has other elements. So, yeah, it's really cool that and less restrictive. So the Filipino martial arts allow us to have an umbrella, and
There's
then we integrate
flexibility.
our arts. That's what modern arnis is to me. I was able to do Jesse's. I was able to do Pindakar Paul's. I was able to do Jim Ingram's work. I was able to do Muay Thai and integrate those elements in. And it's all Filipino martial arts. So some people get it, some people don't. So nothing pure about NSI. It's purely the individual, not the art.
Not the actual, yeah. You got something just amazing going on. This camp, obviously, I just, more I'm hearing about it, and just I'm trying. Could it be stated or is? Yeah, yeah, absolutely, bro. Wow, 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 just amazing. I mean, and you, okay, so folks, if you're listening, this camp is the first weekend in September, correct?
Yep, Labor Day weekend, September 1st, 2nd, 3rd.
I'll be
Correct.
in. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't want to go. I'm gonna be in Hawaii with Burton. He wanted, or he had me plans to come out there. So
Yeah. Yeah.
next year
And,
though.
you can go to on my website, wardendefense.com, and you
Okay.
guys can also check out Jeff's website, naturaltactical.com. And also go to YouTube and watch Jeff's videos there. He's got some amazing, insightful training programs and just segments. There's one that's really good. I'm not sure of the guy's name, but I've passed the link on. It's "Do you want to shoot like John Wick?" And that, of course, that's a catchphrase, but the guy's a operator. Do you know who I'm talking about, Jeff?
That one might have been Byron Rogers. I can't remember. There's been so
Yeah,
many.
black dude.
Byron Rogers. Yeah. And
Yeah,
then
yeah.
on Instagram as well, Jeff_Johnsgaard. I think that one's one of the second videos on my Instagram.
On your Instagram, okay, because I got your Jeff. I got your website here. Just for the folks who are, and I'm going to put this in the comment section. What is the YouTube channel?
Natural Tactical. So it's just YouTube / Natural Tactical.
Oh, Natural Tactical. Okay, all right.
Yeah, I don't put too much educational stuff because, of course, I'm afraid of training bad people, but especially in gun stuff. But you'll get an idea.
You mean you shouldn't put like all the good stuff there so the criminals can emulate it and go on their
Trust me, we'll talk more about how that. Yeah,
I know when I see people showing knife stuff on it, I'm just like, you sure you really want to post that on YouTube? But yeah, anyway, yeah, but okay, so I'm just bear with me, guys, because I'm gonna jump on now and put this in the comment section. All right, and so far as. Okay, Jeff's website. And then Datu, of course, everybody by now. Okay, that should be coming through.
and you can sign up for the camp there, which we'd like you to do just so we know how much food to get.
Yeah, no doubt. That's probably one of the hardest things is predicting the food cost and and doing the shopping. That type of thing.
That chef needs to know. I mean, that's
Yep. And then we usually donate the food to needy people at the end of the camp if there's extra food left over, that type of stuff. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I do scholarships for the camp. So last year I think we brought in father, wife, and son. So they just couldn't make it. Yeah, there's quite a bit of that. Dr. Brett's widow, she sponsored a scholarship. Let's see, Michael Anderson up in Canada, he paid an extra fee. Yeah, he paid an extra fee for the camp, so there's another scholarship there. So he paid 2 fees, 2 camp fees, and donated one as a scholarship. So let's try to, sometimes it's divided. I'll get 2 guys that maybe can't afford it, but they can come on Saturday. Okay, so your fees paid for, your food's paid for. Just
It's beautiful stuff, man.
John Emerson coming in from Pennsylvania.
Mm.
He drove across country. Cost him 2 Dodge Caravans. He paid like $600 and drove it to Kansas. Had to buy another one off Craigslist. Drove that. Yeah. And then somehow, I think he flew out one time, and he got to the Gig Harbor Inn, and he called. He goes, well, yeah, I'm just getting ready to leave. I said, well, where are you? He said, I think I'm at the Gig Harbor Inn. He says, the map says it's only an inch away. I said, an inch away of trees and, waterways.
On a graph.
Yeah, that's a long walk.
That
So
can be
just
100
stay
miles.
where you are. Just stay where you are. I'll pick you up,
Oh, that's funny. Wow. Jeez. Well, all right. And all right. Let me I'm sorry, one more time, Datu. I'm putting your web. I want folks to
get
website.
Wordendefense.com. WORDEN. Yeah.
Okay.
Just click on seminars, and there'll be the information and all the rest of it on there.
Okay.
On my website's a contact form. It'll email straight to me. If you got any questions on anything, anytime, just reach out.
Worden Defense. Okay. Good enough. Awesome. Well, guys, again, I want to thank you both for coming on. This has been awesome.
We appreciate what you do. Yeah, we appreciate what you do, and you do a really good job. I enjoy a lot of the interviews myself when I get a chance to set in.
Oh, well, thank you. Coming from you, it's not always easy. You're always dealing with that passive aggressiveness from others, that behind the scenes, why'd you interview him? What he said wasn't true. And I mean, people don't understand what I deal with on the back end, you know what I mean? But
live videos. Yeah, live videos and live recordings. It's sometimes hard to keep the progress or the progression going, the conversation going. And so you got to be on top of it, and you're improvising. Dude, you're doing natural spirit via the microphone.
See? Oh, it's like this presence is coming through from you, through me, through the internet into me.
Yeah, that's right. There you go.
Jeff, I'm going to be definitely in touch. I would love to bring you on, talk about the whole gun thing, drawing under pressure, all the other stuff that you were talking about. And if you're willing, absolutely, I'd love to make it happen.
No, my pleasure. Thank you so much for this opportunity. It's always great to get on in a group of like-minded people.
Datu. Yeah, we both got to thank Datu. Datu, he was telling me, he should come on. I'm like, if Datu says he should come on, he's coming on. But guys, hey, if I do not talk to either one, well, I'll be Datu. I'll be in touch with you, Jeff. But Datu, I hope the camp turns out. I'm sure it will. Wishing the best of luck with it and everything else, but I'm sure it'll be a success like the past 42 ones, it sounds like, and all that. And it looks like you got a great team around you that's working behind you, with you, in front of you. So, looks like you're in good shape overall.
Yep.
Coming back after COVID.
Great event. Yep, for sure. So we want to thank you, Dean. Appreciate you being there. Thanks for coming on, Jeff.
Yeah, absolutely, guys.
Thank you.
All right. Well, hey, you guys take care, and I'll be in touch.
All right.
To you and your listeners, thank you. Right on.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye. I'll be in touch, Jeff. So don't run away. All right. You take care. All right, folks, here it is, the water and street camp. So sounds pretty incredible. I'm hoping next year. I would go this year, but Burton kind of set something up with me some months back and all that. So prior commitment, but if you guys are free, just sounds incredible. And a chef, lectures, chef, training, man. Huh? All right, who is next? Who is next? I should know the answer to this, but I don't. And I don't. But I can guarantee you somebody is definitely coming on next. I just don't know who yet. So that information will be released shortly. So as always, check us out. All future interviews are pinned in FMA discussion. So you guys will definitely know who's coming next. I'm just looking right now who's kind of left for June. I think we're pretty close to everybody else. So actually, you're going to be posting July's list pretty soon. July's going to be pretty interesting. Miguel Ruby, Terrell Richardson. Who else for July? Conrad, Instructor Conrad. I'm really hoping that happens. Big fan of Instructor Conrad. Somebody's trying to get a hold to on Kit. Might be bringing Vampire back for part 2. Yeah, so be no shortage of guests. Be exciting guys, I guarantee you. All right, folks, I will see you next time. Thank you for all that watched, commented, and take care.